The comments and statements made within the show are the opinions of the commentators and their guests, have not been evaluated by the FDA, and are in no way attempt to diagnose, treat, mitigate, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. The contents of the show are not to be construed as medical advice. If you have a health condition or health concern, please contact a licensed, qualified healthcare practitioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom, and this is a Supplement Super Sleuth.
That'll be me, and the Herbal Storyteller.
And that definitely would be me. And together, we're going to take a peek behind the curtain of the natural products industry.
We'll be sharing naturals in the news, dispelling lots of myths, interviewing key players in the industry, and highlighting our favorite herbs and supplements.
So with that, let's pull back that curtain and see what's there.
Hey, Tom.
Good morning, Ann. I love that music.
I know. It's so jazzy. It gets me in the mood.
Soothe the troubled waters. It's been one of those days, right?
It is pouring rain outside. Like downpouring cats and dogs.
It's a beautiful day here in California, sunny Santa Cruz.
Oh, just be quiet.
No, I just spoke too soon because the fog bank is rolling in. So I'm serious.
No way, really? All right. Well, let's get rolling right out of the box because we have a lot to share today. We're going to start with our all-time really fun and faves, Naturals in the News, where we just get to share all kinds of news about what's going on with herbs and supplements, and there is a lot of it. I mean, it is constant. It's a deluge of information. A lot of great research going on finally. So the first piece that I'd like to share with everyone, and of course we love Tom's comments, so is here's the headline. Herbal show promise in tackling UV-induced skin disorders. So this is a review, and it was posted in Cosmetic Design Europe, May 11th, 2022. A new review.
Yeah, so fairly recent.
Yeah. A new review article has identified more than 100 herbal ingredients, including some are foods and herbs, but herbs are just superfoods, really. Papaya, grapefruit, lemon balm, and rosemary that are supported in both in vivo and in vitro research as holding potential for prevention and treatment of UV-induced skin disorders. And, a lot of us in the herb world, as herbalists, when we were first starting to learn in my 20s, early 20s, you make your own creams, you make your own oils, you make your own, and it's a blend.
One of the first things
Absolutely, right? And they're fabulous. You can eat them and wear them. So, really, really great. Another head.
Well, Nan, the thing is that you're talking herbs, but there are mushrooms too that they have proven actually work really well on UV damage. And one of them, which makes perfect sense, is a mushroom called chaga, because it's in that that circumpolar region where there's a ton of sun exposure.
Right.
And a lot of UV damage to skin.
Right, the reflection off the snow makes it so much. Right, exactly. You can get a terrible burn with 3 feet of snow, right? Who would have thought?
Exactly.
All right, next headline. Branded saffron ingredient Saffron gains U.S. patent for mood support. So I love this. Like we take these beautiful herbs and then we turn them into herbs of commerce, and then of course they become owned, right? So it's a really odd thing.
Danger.
Yeah, I don't know.
Overpicked.
But this was published in Nutritional Outlook, May 20th, 2022, after being supported by the results of 8 human clinical trials that underpin its use for improving one's mood and sleep quality. A proprietary extract of saffron has been granted a U.S. patent. Big news. Very big news.
And, it's interesting, though, because saffron, literally anybody who's ever seen the crocus flower, because that's where saffron comes from, is a crocus flower. All it is the little tiny pollen-covered stamens that are inside that little crocus flower that have to be picked at exactly the right time. So people are like picking those on their hands.
And we did a little episode talking about saffron. We had a conversation about it. There was a great article in one of the many herb magazines that I read.
They're starting to grow it in the United States.
Yes, up here on the East Coast in Vermont. So there are a lot of new, farmers in the U.S. that are doing that. So that's pretty great. Very exciting. Next headline: How herbal supplements send one woman to the ER. This made it to the
Here we go.
This made it to U.S. News and World Report, May 17th, 2022. 56-year-old woman experienced heart arrhythmia after taking 6 times the recommended dosage of hemp oil, in addition to supplementing with berberine, which comes from either golden seal or berberine itself. An episode that has brought attention to the possible side effects of irresponsible use of supplements and how they can interact with other medications. So I have lots of comments. I know Tom has lots of comments. So did any of you know that you can kill yourself from too much water? Yep. Flood the kidneys.
You can drink, not like drowning in water. You can drink too much water.
Not like hopping in water and not knowing how to swim and sinking to the bottom. But you can drink too much and can shut your kidneys down and you can die. You can, you can eat foods that you have allergies to and go into anaphylaxis and kill yourself on something so safe as food. So here's the first thing.
Well, I'm flabbergasted at that article, Nan, because it's like, I know I read another article a while back about a woman who was taking Tylenol, and she was in so much pain, she just kept taking Tylenol, and she kept thinking, well, okay, the pain didn't go away, I need to take more Tylenol, and she destroyed her liver.
She ended up in the hospital, lost her liver, and she
ended up in the hospital,
and she had to have a liver transplant, which is not uncommon for over-the-counter drugs. So here's the real rub.
Supplement. That's what they were kind of picking on.
Right.
Is like the idea of
and supplements and herbs are so bad for you. Better, it's anything you put in your mouth. You really should know what you're doing, and that includes your food. So you need to be talking to a clinical herbalist, who knows what they're doing with herbs. And I know these things are available. But you should at least consult, especially if you're on pharmaceuticals, you should go to your doctor before you add anything to your regimen. And if they don't know and they're not sure, then you really should call a registered clinical herbalist or a naturopath who's trained in herb use or a chiropractor who's trained in herb use. So please do yourself all a favor before you start doing these things. I mean, if you're young and you're not on any pharmaceuticals and you read the label and you follow what the label said, which is 30 drops, right? And don't go over that. All right, I'll give you that. But honestly, Tom and I are here to say that we don't misbehave around these things either. We take them as recommended.
Exactly. The thinking is, especially American thinking, is a little is good.
A lot is better.
So much better. And, that applies across the board for so many different things. But really and truly, there are databases. You can go out, you can search ahg.org. And ahg.org is a listing of all of the registered herbalists, the registered clinical herbalists. You can go to the, naturopaths and find, qualified naturopaths in your area. But you also need to ask. You need to, when you finally connect with somebody, you need to ask the question, hey, how much do you know about herbs? How much study have you done on herbs? Because it's just like with medical doctors. As far as nutrition is concerned, when they go through their medical education, they get maybe a couple of hours worth of nutritional information, because they've got so much else to cover.
Right.
So, don't just assume that because somebody says, oh, I'm an herbalist. Ask them questions. Find out what they know about the herbs that you're curious about, or what they know about the condition that you're trying to take care of. It's always better to consult an expert.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're older, and when you're young, the body bounces back and recovers pretty quickly. But when you're older, when you're over 40, and that's a lot of people will say that, I did great until I hit the age of 40, and then the wheels came off the truck. And I hear that all the time. It is really true. You start getting up into 40, 50, 60s. then you have to be really careful about what you choose, and your body's more fragile. It doesn't bounce back the way that it used to, and really need to think about those things.
So before we move on, Nan, I just want to put a little context in here. When you're talking to people about, I see that all the time, that's because you have been a practicing clinical herbalist for decades. And you have worked with herbal medicines and herbal adjuncts for decades. So
well,
you've
and
seen
it's true
that.
too. And you've been an educator and trainer in the world of herbs for decades, and have been connected with East West School of Planetary Herbalism for decades, and worked with physicians in Hawaii doing juicing for a very long time. So you have an enormous body of knowledge, and you're careful. And so that's it. I agree. I think it's really important for all of us to not just go, "Ooh, this looks good," and just start taking things. I think it's really important you have
Right,
to look at the whole
right.
picture, right? Everything you're eating, the sleep that you're doing, the age that you are, that's really important. And I'm not saying you have to say, "Well, I'm 60, so I'm old." That's not it. It's just you have to say, "Well, I'm 60, and so I just need to be more
My
careful."
body works
Right, my
differently.
body works differently, so I need to be more careful, and I need to be more considerate about what I'm taking or doing. So just that. So
Hmm.
that's us being
Absolutely.
being like mama and the papa.
Okay.
All right. So now our next part of the show, which we really we really work hard on this part. This is a part that we're sharing deeper knowledge. Naturals in the Know is a place where we either bring in people and interview them, or we share the knowledge that we have. And of course, this week, as promised, we are following up with the part 1 on men's sexual health that we did a couple of weeks ago. And Tom is our lead on this, and he has an unbelievable wealth of knowledge. And so I just want to ask a few questions of all of you. Did you know that more than 30 million men in the US have erectile dysfunction? And that represents 1 out of every 8 man, almost every 8 man. So nearly 50% of the men from age 40 to 70 years of age are affected by erectile dysfunction. And most stats focus only on the physical, giving little to no emphasis on the psychological or emotional influences
That's
of
absolutely
ED,
true.
or premature ejaculation. So Tom, with my occasional input, will delve very deeply into the herbal helpers from around the world for this. So he's going to give he's going to literally paint the paintbrush. But I also want to say that although there's going to be an enormous amount of information in his sharing today, that there's even more, and it goes even deeper. And don't take it upon yourself just to say, "Oh, I like the sound of that, let me try that." Just make sure you reach out. How's that?
And just now coming, just now coming. There it
Yay.
is. Ta-da. Oh, that looks like us. So basically, what we talked about at the very beginning on part 1 was this, you know, when you go out on the internet and you're a man and you'll find all kinds of ads for sexual enhancement. And we basically have been told, we kind of, I mean, yeah, I'm a 73-year-old man. So let's put it right out there. I'm a 73-year-old man, and I'm very proud of the fact that I've survived this long and have been through so many things. Uh, so there are different points of view depending on how old you are. But when you look at these stats and you see that 30 to 50% of the men between the ages of 40 and 70 suffer from erectile dysfunction, and that's a pretty significant amount of men who have this
For sure.
problem. It's like we're not alone as a man with some kind of what we what other people would say would be a sexual dysfunction may not necessarily be that sexual dysfunction. It may more be from a traditional Chinese
Sure.
herbal point of view, from an Ayurvedic point of view, from other points of view. It may be that we are just so stressed out, so drained, so taken away, our energy is so taken away by the so many things that we see. And what we get is an answer that says, okay, take this pill and you'll be able to perform like a racehorse. You'll be able to, be rock hard and solid as long as you want and rock her world and all of those things that you're going to see on the internet. But it's just it's not necessarily so, because I got a kind of a saying that I like to say that it's not a good idea to borrow from tomorrow so that you can play today. And
That is a really
that's
true statement. It's never a good idea to do
yes, it's
that.
like don't borrow from tomorrow so that you can play
Right.
today because you're going to find out that it's like the other old joke that what do you mean I don't have any money left? I have plenty of checks left in my
Right.
checkbook. Um, that's so what we were talking about in episode 1 was the fact that from many traditional points of view, what we're looking at doing rather than looking at something that's going to push, whether it's a pharmaceutical like Viagra, which was originally researched as an herb, or whether it's the actual herbal components, we want to build a foundation. So part of what we're going to be doing right today is looking at some herbs, and we're just going to be very brief because, as Nancy said, this gets very
Mm-hmm.
deep, and everybody or everybody is
Yeah.
different. And so when you work with a practitioner, you're going to have somebody who really can understand the nuances that might be needed to be corrected in order to restore an imbalance. Because really what it is an imbalance. So keep that in mind. We're going to look at some herbs. We're going to talk about them a little bit real briefly here, but this is not intended to be a know-all and show-all. This is just to give you an idea that these are the herbs you're going to see in almost every male formula. When I show you the pushing herbs, these are going to be the herbs you're going to see in almost every male formula in one combination or another. And they will work for some people, they won't work for others. And part of the reason they won't work is generally speaking that the body is exhausted and it's trying to give you a
Mm.
message. So let's move forward on
Okay.
this. What do we have in the next slide? Starting off with what is the physical reason for an erection? The physical reason for an erection is the body produces something called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide relaxes the veins in the penis and allows more blood to come into the penis and engorge the penis or get it erect. And without that nitric oxide, there's no erection. Now there's a compound called PDE5, and PDE5 is a compound that takes away that nitric oxide. It literally stops the production of nitric oxide, which means that the veins in the penis tighten up again, and then there's no engorgement and there's no erection. So one of the interesting things is that when Pfizer was studying, they were studying an herb that we're going to look at called epimedium or horny goatweed. They were studying it as a circulatory tonic, and when they found out that it also had this effect on an erection, they realized, hey, forget the circulatory tonic. We got much
Yeah.
more money. We're
This
doing an
seems
erection
more
project.
this seems more relatable to a lot of people, right? And then
Yeah, it made
and
no pun intended, but made him stand up and take notice.
and I think I want to underscore the word nitric oxide relaxes and opens. So, and you need blood.
Yes.
So these are things that Tom's going to circle back on, relative to the conversation. But just keep that in mind that you need a lot of blood and you need relaxation. So if you're uptight, and I mean uptight, you're going to have problems with those.
And literally, when Nan says you need a lot of blood, there are conditions that were seen in traditional Chinese medicine that were called blood deficient. In other words, your body just wasn't making enough blood, and if you're not making enough blood, guess what? It's not going to go to recreational things when it's needed other
In your
places.
heart, especially, right? Okay, so great. So PDE5 inhibits nitric oxide, and then so you don't get engorgement, pretty much, right?
Yes, and that's what the next slide is
Right.
going to show you, that you have neurotransmitters in the penile fiber, and you've got vasodilators of smooth muscle cells in the penis, and when those all combine and you get the nitric oxide production, then the penis engorges and you've got an erection.
Yay.
If it doesn't work that way, you don't have an erection. There's nothing to stand up and shout about. So, why from a traditional herbal perspective?
Right.
Well, really one of the things is again, that the body needs certain things. And when you combine these, aging, hard work, hard exercise, you're going to need to take something to replenish all of that energy. Now, if you're very sexually active, the expenditure of semen itself is the expenditure. It takes a ton of energy from your body to produce that semen. And if you just keep giving it away and giving it away and giving it away and giving it away, it's draining the body. Now, if you take and put on top of that all of the stresses from work, the stresses from environmental exposure to things, you start getting to the point where you're going to
What about raising a family? What about taking care of the house and the lawn? And yeah,
exactly. And oh my God, the car broke
and
down.
what if you're taking extra courses
you know,
because you want to get a master's or get a PhD
learn
or
something
something
new
like
and
something new.
get a better income.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
So, in episode 1, we talked about the fact that in traditional Chinese herbalism, they had what they called the three treasures. So they had Jing, and they had Qi, and they had,
Shen.
Yin. And so, what we really, we're looking at Jing, which is the foundation. If you don't have a foundation, how do you build a house? So then you've got the Qi, and that's your energy. And you've got the Shen, and the Shen is that glow, that life essence. And even in Ayurveda, they had words for the same three energies that they talked about. So really what we're looking at is okay, what herbs can tonify me? What herbs can give me back some of that essence that I need? How do I help to rebuild it? Because from one point of view, if you expend too much of your essence, you're not going to get it back. It's not that easy to replace or rebuild. So, it can be done.
So another way of saying what Tom's saying is, yes, PDE5 does inhibit nitric oxide production, which of course closes up, the vessels, and then you don't have engorgement. But that doesn't really take into account with, do you have enough fluids? Do you have enough bloods? Why aren't you relaxed? Do you have enough energy? Even if you had enough fluids and enough bloods, do you have enough energy? Do you have enough chi? Right? So
do you have the right kind of energy?
Exactly. Yeah. So what we're seeing is it's a way bigger picture with a lot more dynamism to it relative to your sexual energy and your sexual ability. So
performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Performance, if you want to say it that way too. But it's also the other pieces too. So moving along, Tom.
What we're going to do here is, these are the wonderful herbs that everybody asks about. These are aphrodisiacs. They're going to make me want to, they're going to give me great vitality. They're going to give me great virility. They're going to give me like massive hard-ons, excuse the language, but that's the idea that's being sold on the internet. And nobody's talking to us as men about, okay, how do I make sure I don't run out of funds?
Right. Just keep spending. Keep spending.
Yeah, just spend. It's okay.
Yeah.
Spend and expend.
Not only do you have nothing in savings, but now you're in debt. Right. And we talked about this in episode 1.
And then other organ systems start to go wrong because you've used up too much. So some herbs that would be very familiar with most people are going to be things like ginseng, both Korean red ginseng and Chinese ginseng. And in many cases, the Korean red ginseng is actually, in a lot of studies, is being looked at as being even stronger.
It's very heating. It's hot.
Yeah, it's very heating. Now, keep in mind that in herbalism, there's the idea of herbs that are cooling and moistening and herbs that are heating and drying. So if you're using something that's very heating and it's also drying, now you start to run out of fluid. And when you run out of fluid, just think about, can you run your car engine with no water in the radiator? No, not really. Can you run your body with no oil, with no fluid in your body? No, you can't. So one of the interesting things you can look here at the slide is the fact that ginseng is known to help benefit nitric oxide production. And that's the way that it works, and there's a lot of clinical studies on it. So is it a great sexual tonic? Yes, it is. But again, is that all there is to it? No,
and
it's
when
not.
you take it as
Now
a
you can look at
simple and not in a formula that balances a little bit better, you can feel a little irritated. It's the same with maca, which is also kind of like what you're going to talk about with ginseng, but both of them can make you feel irritable if you take them as a simple herb, meaning only those as an herb and not in formula. Yeah.
Maca, when you look at it, it looks like a turnip, and it is. It is a root vegetable that is used as a food in the Andes by the Incans, and has been for centuries and centuries and centuries. It's also used as a sexual enhancing food. So it's great for high altitude energy because that's where it comes from. But it's also great for sexual vigor. It's been used by women for hormonal balance and by men for sexual energy. So it is a great herb. But again, as Nancy's pointing out, these are herbs that are going to be pushing. So you really want to be combining other things with them. Let's see what else we got here, Nan. Okay, now antler velvet. Okay, deer antler velvet is considered to be one of the hottest, one of the strongest, what the Chinese would call yang herbs. And it enhances testosterone production. So that's why it's a big deal. That's why guys are all over it, because they think, okay, I want it because it's going to increase my testosterone. That's going to give me bigger muscles. That's going to give me more sexual stamina. One of the other things about antler velvet is it's really great for joint mobility. It really does help with joint function. It helps support thyroid function, which is, keep in mind the thyroid
where you get it is really important too, right, Tom? Because they
absolutely. It can be, it can be harvested ethically and humanely. It can be, taken not so nicely.
Yeah, it can.
So because the horns are literally being cut off.
Yeah, and it's like I think in Australia they don't do that. They actually
New Zealand, New Zealand they have very very. It's all watched over by a vet, and it's done very very carefully. It is literally respected as an aphrodisiac in traditional Chinese medicine. It's one of those that you'll see, but you will generally never see taking it just by itself. And that brings us to yohimbe, which is from Africa. And this is an African indigenous herb that basically has a very similar effect to Viagra. It does enhance the dilation of the capillaries in the penis and the blood vessels. It increases the release of something called nitric oxide synthase, which helps to produce more nitric oxygen. And it also works with a neurotransmitter.
And you have to be careful with yohimbe.
Norepinephrine. Yeah. But and that's really where I was going with this. A little goes a long way, and more is not better. It can cause really strong heart palpitations, excessive heart rate. It can cause you to feel extremely hot. It can raise your blood pressure. So does it work? Yes, it works. Is it safe? In small amounts, it can be used, but not long periods. And generally speaking,
not by itself.
Don't overdo it.
It should be in formula.
Yeah, don't be like the lady who took 5 times the amount of CBD oil. Okay, so another one that's you're almost always going to see in your formulas is going to be Tongkat Ali or Long Jack, and it comes from Indonesia. And literally, it's kind of an unusual deal. You see the little tree in the picture there. They have to dig that tree up and get at the root. So it's like it's killing the tree. So that you can have your sexual pleasure. But if you go to Indonesia and you ask people, why do you take this herb? It's for the sex, man, for the sex. It's really great for the sex, both men and women. It does enhance testosterone production. So again, that's one of those hormones that is very important in sexual functionality. But again, you can get too much. It works with women as well, but with women it doesn't. It's very interesting. It's an herb that doesn't push the testosterone levels too high in women. So it's not like, if you're a woman and you use Tongkat Ali, you're going to grow a mustache and get a deep voice.
No, and I can attest to that. That's not right. And we've talked about this in it was my favorite thing in a previous
Yeah.
episode. But yeah, it's don't worry, it's not going to turn you into a man. It just women do have
Right.
testosterone, and you need a little bit in order to feel like you have energy. So it just supports your body's normal production of testosterone.
Right. And Tongkat Ali has been shown to actually have an involvement in that PDE5 cycle that we mentioned earlier. Then you've got Tribulus
Right.
terrestris. Now, Tribulus is the way most people hear it is Tribulus, and that's another way to talk about it is puncture vine. So if you were ever a kid riding your bicycle over the dirt lot and you got a puncture burr in your tire and it popped or made your tire go flat, that was probably the same herb, Tribulus terrestris, and it's known to produce testosterone. So it definitely builds muscle mass. It's almost like a plant steroid. So athletes use it a lot before competition. But again, it's one of those heating, drying herbs. And if you use too much of it, other things start going wrong because you're
Yeah, we
drying
use
yourself out.
tribulus
So just understand.
in other formulas for what we call wind phlegm formulas. So like if the person's like has a lot of edema and they're boggy but there's wind also. And so it's an incredible herb and used for hundreds, if not thousands of years in Oriental medicine, but it usually is used in
Well,
formula.
especially in Ayurvedic medicine. Yeah, in Ayurvedic medicine, it's called Gokshara.
Gokshara, right. It's it's an amazing herb, but you got to use it correctly. Yeah.
Yep. So, and then here we are with the famed horny goat weed, so called because the Chinese name literally means lusty goat, and it's Yin Yang Huo, and the Yin Yang Huo was named that because shepherds who herded goats noticed that when their flock ate this particular plant, they got very lusty, and there were a lot more mountings, a lot more kids later on in the year, and so on. And they realized, okay, this plant has some really profound effects. One of the major effects, which we mentioned earlier, was the fact that it has a profound effect on PDE5, and it can lower the level of PDE5, which allows erections to last longer or to even take place. So again, though, as with all these herbs that we're talking about, the caveat is don't take it long term. Don't take it in high amounts. If you take it in high amounts, there can be respiratory issues where you have breathing problems. It can overheat your body, make you feel extremely hot and uncomfortable.
Dry you out.
So again, the idea here is that we're giving you names of herbs. We're giving you things so you can sort of understand what do they
And you'll
do
see
and
them.
why do they do and why would they be in male
Yeah, you'll
formula.
see them in male formulas.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but so now Sistanch is a really interesting
Yes.
one. It's a parasitic herb. It grows on roots of trees in the desert. So very interesting herb. It was reputed to be Genghis Khan's favorite herb for sexual vitality, and when you look at the geneticists and they tell you that Genghis Khan's DNA is scattered all over the globe and he's fathered more children than any man in history, there might be something to that. It's used in traditional Chinese herbalism to treat impotence and to treat erectile dysfunction and infertility. It's another one that they know enhances testosterone production. And it's very much revered as a sexual tonic. Again, it's one of those yang tonics. It's something that pushes.
Yeah.
So remember, in order to push, if you're going to push a car, for instance, you have to plant your feet strongly on the ground.
Definitely.
You have to have some kind of foundation to push
Yeah.
against. That's what the other side of yang, which is yin, is
Right.
talking about. That's that foundation, that ability to have something in reserve and to be able to recover. So go ahead. And then this is Cnidium, and it's a great tonic for circulation to the pelvic region. It's absolutely wonderful to bring more blood flow, and that's what we were
Right.
talking. Everything that we're talking about has to do
Blood
with
flow.
blood flow.
Right.
So it's a great herb for that. It's not strong. It doesn't push quite as heavily, but it really benefits when it's combined with other Chinese herbs or
Exactly.
other herbs. So you'll very often see it in a formula, not so much because it's going to have that direct effect, but because it's going to have that supportive effect. And then cinnamon bark, people get really surprised when they see cinnamon bark because it's like, well, why would you have
Good for
cinnamon
the
bark in there?
circulation. Right.
Yeah, and it's a circulation. It's a
Right.
warming herb that promotes
Mm-hmm.
circulation, and it can be combined, as you can see there in the notes. There are a couple of Chinese herbs, jujube dates for one,
Longans.
which are very
Mm-hmm.
nice and sweet, but they're also
They're
blood
blood
building,
building. Yeah.
and longan.
Mm-hmm.
And longan is also blood building. So they both support circulation and blood building and giving you, you got to have something to put into that erectile
Right.
tissue, giving you that blood. So wonderful. You can make a great
Yeah.
tea out of that. Now, these are Ayurvedic
Mm-hmm.
herbs. And Saffron muesli is literally another herb that is used to enhance testosterone production, to combat and remedy fatigue and really deep rooted fatigue. So it's a combination of a building herb, and at the same time it's an herb that somewhat pushes. So, it enhances sperm production. It really is another herb that's great for pelvic circulation, and we talk a lot about
Yeah.
circulation. But at the same time, it's not an herb that happens
Right.
overnight. And as Americans, we want something,
Yesterday.
I want it now. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And this is not one of those herbs. This
Saffet's
is
more
like many
tonifying.
building.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
tonifying than it is pushing over it, but it has has qualities of both. But Saffet mostly it has more of that building component, so all the tonics take longer. You just got to get on them if your clinical herbalist says so, and then stay on them, and then be patient. Like Tom's gonna say, be patient. They work, but you have
Yeah.
to build.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and the old saying, Rome was not built in a
Mm-mm.
day. So literally speaking, some of these herbs are going to push. So like yohembi, it's going to push, and it's going to push really hard, and that's why it has to be very carefully balanced, and you don't want to take too much. Other of the herbs like the Saffron muesli or the
Shilajit.
shilajit that you see here are wonderfully nourishing compounds, wonderfully nourishing plants and allies. So shilajit comes out of the high Himalayan mountains, and in the late spring and early summer when things are finally warming up, it just literally leaks out of the side of the mountain.
It's rock poop.
And yes, it's rock. Yeah, some people call it rock poop, because it's like a tar that's
It's
kind of
tarry,
leaking out of
yeah.
the side of the
And it
mountain.
looks like tar.
But
It's
it but
really
it comes
black and
it does very
really,
black
really
and
thick.
really and heavy duty
Yes,
taste. I mean,
it's
it's that.
intense.
Yeah,
I
you're
love it
you're
though.
really
It's
this
so
is a
good.
very strong taste. However, there's over 84 minerals in that exudate because it's coming from plants that have a long time ago died and been compressed, and they've had all of that time, just the same way that you've got oil. Well, this is like plant plant
Yeah,
oil that is all
it's
compressed and it's
amazing.
coming out of the mountain,
Yeah,
and it's an amazing
yeah,
builder for overall health, and it's a good sexual
yeah.
tonic as well. Now from South America, you've got these two, and they're very often combined in formulas. They've been used for hundreds of years in Brazil, especially because they're Amazonian herbs. Morapuama and Catuaba. No, excuse me. Morapuama literally translates to potency wood, and these are the top two Brazilian sexual tonics.
Right.
Okay, there's not a lot of research. So some of the other herbs that we've shown you there, yeah, there's some pretty good research on,
It's
but
traditional
these two
use.
herbs, there's not a
Right.
lot of research, right? They've been used for so long that people don't even need the research. They're just like,
This
hey, I
is
don't care, it
this is
works.
what my
And
grandpa
that was
used to use, and this is what my great grandpa used to use, and yeah. So
not Nan's personally, but
I mean, not
yeah,
personally, but not mine. But that's it's traditional use, right?
right.
So
And so a lot of times now, because again, on the internet, people are trying to come up with formulas that are different to set them apart, to say, okay, we're different because we have
right.
this. Use us instead of everybody else's. I just understand that that's what these herbs are all about. They're the two top sexual tonics, And, they also combat fatigue. But now here's where the rubber kind of meets the road as far as I'm concerned.
Me too.
As far as I'm concerned,
And me.
the tonic herbs are where the secret is.
Yes.
Now, there's a gentleman who's an herbalist who has written a book about Chinese herbs. The Chinese. Trying to remember the name of the book all of a sudden now. It's Ron Teagarden is the herbalist's name, and
we talked
he
about
has written
it.
a wonderful
We
book.
talked about it in part 1, and we actually have a picture of the book in part 1. And
yes, we did. Yes, we did. So
he really, as an herbalist, he's always been someone who felt like we don't have enough tonics, we don't have enough formulas that build and restore, and Americans don't have any connection to building and restoring. I mean, even the way we spend money is not about building and restoring, right? It's like, how do you get rich fast and instantly,
and this was a man who basically was exhausted and was given a Chinese herbal tonic, which I'm going to show you
Yeah.
in a minute, and it changed
Yeah.
his life. And then he went and sought out an herbal teacher and learned from him, and he has specialized in tonic herbs for well over 40 years now, probably
and it's
closer
very
to
true.
50
I
years.
agree. I think a lot of the way that we think about our bodies here in the West is, well, your bodies are for your own use. You should just use them. And we don't really think about it like, well, I feed it really well, and I drink water every day, and I have a good diet. And that's the end of the conversation. So that's not enough, and it'll never be enough. Well, I take supplements. That's not enough either, because supplements are missing other components that we have not captured the magic of whole herb and whole herb formulas. So tonics are, like Tom said, and I agree, that's where the magic is. But you have to be patient, and most of us are not patient. So, but we're telling you, be patient. These tonics are amazing. And so I think the next few slides that are about the tonics that are most used and have good research on are something to really consider if you're in that category of, okay, this part of my life has really waned, and I want to do
The
something
wheels have
about
come
it.
off.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really want to do something about it, and I want to be safe, and I want to be conscientious about how I do this.
Yeah. And
Jogulon.
that book is the
Ancient
ancient wisdom of Chinese herbs by Ron Teagarden. Now that I got my memory back.
I'll just keep talking till it comes. I knew it would come.
Right, exactly. And there's another wonderful book if you like to read books. There's a book by a man named James Green, who's a wonderful herbalist who wrote a book called The Male Herbal.
That's
The Male
excellent.
Herbal, Herbal. Really great book. It covers a lot of other topics besides just sexual function. So it's a great between those two. And Ron, like I said, is absolutely
Yes,
famous
he is. He's
for
famous.
making tonics. Yeah, I mean, he made tonics for Mick Jagger to keep Mick Jagger on the road, things like that. So he's made tonics for the stars, for athletes. He's an amazing guy. Has a shop called Dragon Herbs. You can look at dragonherbs.com and find some really
Really
amazing
good and
information.
really good
So,
tonics. Yep. So
yeah, so now
Jogulon.
what we do is Jogulon is it's as you can see, it's a vine, and they're using the leaves of the Jogulon. They make a tea out of it, and it's not like they're taking the root. They're taking the leaves, but it has what are called saponins, and it's got more saponins in it than ginseng. So in southern China, they call it southern ginseng because they respect it so much for its ability to rebuild and to tonify the body. So it has a wonderful ability to enhance endurance. And that's really important. It's also been shown to regulate nitric oxide production in the body. So it does have that support for sexual functionality. But keep in mind, nitric oxide is also good for circulation all over the body, not just in the penis. So really great thing. Astragalus
Astragalus.
is just an amazing
An herb of
adaptogen that
commerce.
it works for sexual
Yeah.
health, for
Yeah.
longevity. It's really helps with testosterone. It's used to treat infertility, sexual dysfunction in this context. But in another context, astragalus is just an amazing herb that was used to protect the body and the immune
It's
system
used in a
to
lot of women's
help it be
formulas
strong.
too. A lot of women's formulas, because it's about the blood. And of course, with women, we're all about blood, especially during our fertile years.
Yep. And so the next one is Rhodiola rosea. Now, rhodiola is an herb that's had tons of research because it's an herb from the Siberian Peninsula and Asia in high altitudes and cold climates. And it was revered by the czars in Russia as a sexual tonic. So it has been researched tremendously in Russia. In fact, there are still a lot of studies that you can't even read unless you can read Russian. You just won't know what they're saying because they haven't been translated. But it was used by Russian athletes. It's
cosmonauts.
Been well documented.
The cosmonauts, they went into space.
One of the studies that
that's right.
One of the studies they did was on long distance truck drivers and stamina and endurance and focus and being able to stay awake and be conscious. So it's a great herb for endurance. And again, that's what you want. You want to be able to build your endurance. You want to be able to build that foundation. Now, dendrobium goes a little bit differently. In traditional Chinese medicine, dendrobium is considered to be like the honeymooner's orchid. You make a tea out of dendrobium you're using the stems of the orchid. And literally, it is replenishing to fluids. So why is it replenishing fluids? Because it's a yin tonic. It's a wonderful, wonderful yin tonic. Beautiful orchid. Absolutely beautiful orchid. Many different styles or varieties of dendrobium. The one that they use most grows on cliff sides and is exposed to fog and all kinds of weather changes. So it's a very balancing. They look at
this stuff is worth its weight in gold. It really is. This particular yin tonic. It's very expensive if you want to get the right one, but it is incredible.
Right. And Nancy and I visited China
with a group. We were with a group, and we were studying.
On an herbal tour.
Yeah, we were studying in Shanghai in hospital, and everybody went to look for dendrobium, and Michael Tierra and Leslie Tierra, who they're our teachers, and they said we found the right person. So we go into this incredible place in Shanghai, and we go into this back room, and there's all this dendrobium, and it's rolled up. I mean, it's hand rolled up. The stems are rolled up, and it's hard as a rock. You have to grind this down, in order to make a tea. But oh my gosh, there was a buying frenzy for sure. It was an amazing experience, really amazing experience. So it's
a highly revered
tonic.
herb for restoring, and that's why it's in this section.
Yeah.
And then talk about mushrooms. Reishi mushroom was called the mushroom of immortality, and it affects so many different systems in the body. It's something that you can take individually by itself. You can make if you buy the reishi fruiting bodies, you can make a tea out of them. If you use the mycelium, which is the growing part of the mushroom, that's the enduring part of the mushroom. There's so many more compounds that you're going to find than just in the fruit body. But either way that you use it, reishi is an amazing mushroom for restoration.
Oh my God, yeah.
And for strengthening. So super cardiovascular tonic, really great for cardiovascular support. And again, that circulatory support is very important for male sexual function.
And you have to stay on it. You have to literally take it and stay on it. You can't. It's not this is not a quick fix.
No, this is it's like Xiaogulan, it's like all of the other tonics. This is something that you stay on. Well, literally, there's actually in traditional Chinese medicine, there's a whole protocol where they call it the 100-day. And literally, you abstain from sex, you abstain from too heavy of exercise and all of that. You just give yourself 100 days to rebuild, and you're taking Jing restorative, you're taking essence restorative herbs, you're taking Yin restorative herbs, and a little bit of the Yang to make sure that you stay in balance. But that's 100 days.
That's more than 3 months. Yeah.
To rebuild. Right. Yes. Yeah. That's a third of a year. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to take this for a weekend and I'm going to go out and I'm going to be Superman.
But it's extraordinary. It's an amazing restorative practice. Really, truly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same thing applies to cordyceps mushroom. Now, cordyceps is a little bit different because you will experience an energy surge with cordyceps mushroom. It does have that energetic quality to it, partially because it's working in the respiratory system so well to enhance oxygen uptake and the amount of air that we can actually bring in. It opens our lungs up and it lets us breathe deeper. So it's a beautiful respiratory support mushroom, but it's also a mushroom that has been associated with sexual function, with potency, with virility, and it was literally originally it was reserved for the emperor only. If you were caught harvesting this mushroom or with this mushroom and it wasn't going to go to the emperor, you could be killed for it. So
Good grief.
it's very much so.
Things have
And
improved.
it's an interesting
Things
right. It's exactly.
things have improved
And
in
society.
society.
But it's an interesting mushroom because it's not
Right.
feeding on vegetative matter. It's actually feeding on
Right.
insects. So now
Ashwagandha.
ashwagandha is literally what some people would call Indian ginseng, because it is that kind of it has that reputation. And we talked about
In the
ashwagandha
last
in the
episode.
last
Yes.
episode.
Our favorite thing.
Between these
Yes.
two men's sexual function, there was we said a
Yes, we
lot
did.
about ashwagandha. It has so many things that it does. One of the things that it does so well is it helps you get into a deeper and more restorative level
Sleep.
of sleep. And as far as a yin tonic, sleep is the premier Chinese yin
Yes.
tonic. It is the best thing to restore yin. And that tells you quite a bit. Now, down below that is another Ayurvedic herb called Shatavari. And Shatavari can stand for 100 roots. Shatavari means 100 roots. And you can see the picture there of all of those
Yeah.
roots. But we've also talked about it in previous episodes. And it's a wonderful women's tonic, sexual tonic, and restorative. And so Shatavari also can imply, you can take care of 100 husbands.
Who
So,
would want to?
there's that. Yeah, well, who would want to? Right.
But
It's
who
like, are
would
you
really
kidding?
want to do that?
Yeah, now take my husband, please. Take my husband. Um,
Come on. Come on, Tom.
so yeah, so literally, it's like it combats mental fatigue. It enhances sperm production because it's a very yin. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's looked at as a
It
yin
is a
herb.
yin
So
herb, yeah.
let's go on to the next two.
Wu Wei
And we mentioned
I
Shazandra
love
is
Shazam.
Wuweiza. Wuweiza means five
Seed.
flavor
Yeah.
seed. And in Chinese medicine, basically Chinese herbalism, you're looking at five different flavors. Each flavor has an effect in the body. This seed embodies all five of those flavors. One of the things that it's really good at doing is holding on to essence.
Hold the essence.
It
Yeah.
holds on and
Yeah.
keeps you from losing that vital essence. It increases stamina and endurance. It's one of my favorite single herb
It's really
teas
interesting. Some
once
people
you
will
get
say
used
to
to the
me,
flavor.
Nancy, I drink so much water. How can it be that I'm dehydrated? And a lot of that has to do with, the cells become more permeable and they're not exchanging fluids correctly. And it's aging. The cells are aging, and so that
Yeah.
that barrier, because it's not, it's really holding onto the fluids has to do with the exchange of fluids from inside to outside the cells. So, what Wu Wei does is sort of creates a better seal around the cells. And so you really maintain better that fluid, so you want to get rid of the bad fluid, right? The stuff that's like, we call it turbid, right? That turbidity that can happen, right? And fluids that just
It
get
needs to
dank,
go.
right?
Yeah, it needs
But
to
you
go out.
you don't want to get rid of all of it. So that's where Wu Wei is brilliant and works. It's so dependable, and it's in the way that it works in the body. I love it. It's a beautiful herb.
And it is one of those herbs that you can take individually.
Yeah.
It's an
It
acquired
certainly
taste
is.
because it has all five flavors. So, but you can put it.
Taste.
Yeah, right. One of those tastes is astringent,
Yes.
and that's
The
that puckery
pucker.
taste.
Pucker.
But that's also what helps it to hold on
Yes.
to those
Yeah.
fluids. And you can take the seeds when you buy them, and you can put them in a coffee mill, grind them up, and just pour them through.
Make a
do a
tea,
drip,
yeah.
drip, pour a coffee
Yeah.
filter, and make some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tea.
Saw
Now,
palmetto.
saw palmetto, we think of because that's a prostate herb, and absolutely. But the seminal vesicle, the duct that the semen has to go through, runs right through the prostate. And so you want to make sure that the prostate is not swollen. You want to make sure that everything is flowing appropriately. And so it's a really important herb. It was also used, by indigenous people in Florida where there's a lot of it growing as a survival food. So
Yeah.
really, really another great, great supportive herb. Now, these are three traditional formulas that you'll see mentioned in Ron Teagarden's book. You'll see mentioned a lot because they're dealing with exactly what we're
Right.
talking about. The first one that you see on the left there is called Shaowu.
Yeah.
And Shaowu is a formula that restores you. It's like if you've expended yourself, if you've really burnt the candle at both ends, and you're just, you know, this is a formula that you take, and actually you'll get some wonderful results from it even within a week, because it's so restorative. The one in the center is called Dabu Yin. Dabu Yin Wan, and Wan just means pill. So Dabu Yin is abundant yin. So this is again to help return and replenish that base. And then the next one is the Huan Shao Ran. And Huan Shao Ran is basically that's the formula that I mentioned, the dendrobium formula. It literally means return to youth, return to spring, because it restores that. And there's a wonderful legend about a Chinese herbalist who lived over 200 years, and this was his favorite formula. And it was an authenticated. It was authenticated that he lived that long.
Yeah.
Now these are not necessarily what some people would consider herbs because they've been
taken out of the
concentrated.
context of the whole, right?
The context, right? So, and two of them, Nancy mentioned both of them in one of our previous episodes, the first episode on men's sexual function, and that's L-arginine and L-citrulline, and they're very important for nitric oxide production and extremely important for healthy circulatory function. There are studies showing that when they're combined with a compound that's taken from pine bark called pycnogenol, it's called French maritime pine bark is really what it is, and it's called pycnogenol. That's the patented name. That it enhances erectile function. And part of that is because of the effect that pycnogenol has on the health of the vasculature. So when we go to the next slide, you'll see some of the other herbs that you can do to support that engorgement, to support that blood flow. Ginkgo biloba is one that, several herbalists that I know get wonderful results with men's erectile dysfunction
Just with ginkgo.
by using only just ginkgo.
Yeah.
And people think, well, ginkgo is all for the brain. It's for the brain, but what it does is it enhances microcapillary circulation in the body. So it's going everywhere. And it is so it can be used as a restorative, and that's why we have it under this heading is as a restorative, because it is something
like astragalus. It kind of has that same.
The more blood flow you get, the better.
More blood flow going towards the periphery. So versus the center or the central channel. So, it's like your arms and your legs, they're peripheral. They're not an organ, right? So that's the same with the penis. It's peripheral. It's not considered a major organ. So I know it is considered a major organ for most men, but it's not to the body. Your heart is more important. I know. I get it.
We might even name it, but it's still an appendage.
Oh God.
So and pycnogenol, again, like I said, French maritime pine bark. Lots of research on it. Really interesting the way it was originally discovered. Sailors would get scurvy, where they would just start spontaneously bleeding,
right.
And that was because their vasculature was breaking down, and it was from lack of certain nutrients. Like that's when one of the things they found is if they included citrus, that would stop that scurvy problem. And that's why, British sailors were called limeys, because they always took limes with them on the boat so that they could have some source of vitamin C so they wouldn't bleed out on long sea voyages. And when they researched it, they were given some information by Native Americans who used pine bark for the same situation. And research showed that there's this compound called pycnogenol that is, absolutely amazing for restoring healthy endothelial tissue. And that is the last
that's the end of it.
Of our herbs. Yeah.
Well, that was really fun.
And we want to thank you very much. And again, just a reminder, there are so many things that affect male sexual function besides being exhausted. Smoking, if you smoke cigarettes, it's definitely connected to erectile dysfunction. Excessive alcohol consumption, excessive consumption of sugars, excessive consumption of saturated fats, all of those, all of those have a different effect.
They certainly do.
On your ability to perform. So, like Nancy said in the beginning, and like I'm going to reiterate again, find a registered clinical herbalist if you're really interested in seeing how herbs can help you do this. Look into the idea, find a good acupuncturist who really knows Chinese herbs. Because not all acupuncturists have been trained in herbal medicine. They've been trained in acupuncture. But find somebody who knows herbs, and you'll find some amazing allies.
And some naturopaths are really herbally focused and have a lot of training in herbs, and some chiropractors too. Yep. So, just ask a lot of questions and do your due diligence and get support on this and get guidance, because it's not really something you should just pick up and start doing. Especially, again, age has everything to do with it. If you're young, body's very forgiving. Not so much after 40, for sure. So.
Well, and again, the bottom line is be patient.
Be patient with the tonics.
A lot of these herbs, a lot of these things, yes, you can rebuild, and yes, you can get back to that functionality that you're looking for, but it's not going to happen overnight.
And I use the old adage.
Herbs are very gentle
Yes,
allies.
They're gentle to some extent. But I use the old adage. So just remember, if you get yourself into debt, so you have a certain amount of income, right? And you have a savings account. And if you have exhausted the savings account and you're in debt, think about how long it takes you to pay off the debt and then start saving again. It can take years, okay? So we're not talking years, we're talking months, and long months, as long as you've stopped the spending. But a lot of people aren't stopping the spending, right? So think of it that way. It is very similar to that experience. So even if you're going to see a professional, be patient, because it does take time to rebuild. So
And like we said, herbal allies they've been used for hundreds and thousands of years. They work. It takes somebody who knows how they work. And again, don't borrow from tomorrow
so you can play today. So we'll be doing this podcast about twice a month, sharing our perspective, a little bit more than twice a month. It's every other week, really, sharing our perspectives of natural health and healing, interviewing key people in the industry, thought leaders in the natural products industry to hear their perspectives. We'll be giving a lot of our own perspectives on main topics, if you will. And if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe to our Facebook page or our Instagram, YouTube, and now we're on TikTok too. So now please share our podcast with interested friends and family. Let us know if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about, just by adding some comments on any of the social media sites. We'll get back to you, and we'll definitely cover things that you're interested in. Okay, so we want to thank you so much. We hope you have a really great rest of your day, and take good care of yourself, and tune in again to the Supplement Super Sleuth and the Herbal Storyteller.
The Herbal Storyteller.
Ta-ta.
Thanks, Nan.
Okay, everyone. Until next time, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom.
And we'll have more great topics and guests in the very near future. So join us right here in 2 weeks as the Supplement Super Sleuth
and the Herbal Storyteller take another deep dive into the fascinating world of the natural products industry.
See you later.